Welcome to this first video in this new series called The Christian And. Today we're considering the Christian and the environment. The environment is one of the hot topics of today, isn't it? There's lots of talk about climate change, about global warming, about plastic in the oceans. It's even such a hot topic that it takes time on our news reports, even in this COVID crisis. And we have a massive range of opinions on these subjects. We have those claiming the world is going to end in a decade if we don't take drastic action now. And we have others denying there's anything to worry about, some claiming these are all conspiracies. Well, what are we to think? As Christians, living in 2021, what are we to think? What can we say about the Christian and the environment? Well, let me say right out at the start, I'm not here to discuss the evidence of global warming with you. No, I'm here as a pastor to explain how you, as a Christian, should relate to environmental matters. And so I want to just simply make 2 points this morning about the Christian and the environment. Firstly, you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility. When God created man, God made man as the pinnacle of his creation. And God made man to steward creation. That's one of our responsibilities. It's one of the things we are made for, to steward creation. In Genesis 1 verse 28 we read, "Then God blessed man, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And that word dominion does mean to rule, but it implies a rule that is modelled on God's sovereign rule, a benevolent rule, a stewardship. God has put this world into our hands for us to care for it. So should we be concerned about plastic in the oceans? Should we be concerned about issues like deforestation, about the quality of the air that we breathe, and so on? Well, yes, absolutely. We must be. We have this responsibility. God has made an amazing creation, and he has put it into our hands for us to care for us to enjoy, but also to protect and to nurture. We have this responsibility. The environment is something that we as Christians must take very seriously indeed. Now, the second thing I want to say is that we have an assurance. We have an assurance. A lot of what we hear, particularly about things like global warming, is very alarming. And it is true that as best we're able to measure it, our world has been getting steadily warmer over the last 40 years. Looking back to the 70s, it was actually getting colder, but now it's getting warmer. What is less clear is the impact that we are having on global warming, and also what potentially could happen in the long term. As I've already said, some of what we hear is truly alarming. So how, as Christians, do we react to this? Well, what I want to say secondly is we have an assurance. We have an assurance. And it is an assurance that God has given us that we should cling to. For example, in Genesis 8 verse 22, God is speaking to Noah. This is just after Noah has left the ark, after the floodwaters have receded and Noah has come out of the ark. And God makes a promise to Noah. It's in Genesis 8 verse 22. "Whilst the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease." So God doesn't promise there that there's going to be a completely stable climate which is never going to change. He doesn't say the world is never going to get cooler. He doesn't say the world is never going to get warmer. But what he does do is promise that whilst this world continues, we're always going to have seasons. There will always be a time for us to plant, and there will always be a time for us to harvest. God has given us a promise that he is going to sustain this world, that he is going to make sure those seasons continue, that he is going to make sure that as long as this earth continues, there will always be a time to plant, and a time to harvest. These things are only going to come to an end when the Lord Jesus Christ actually returns to wrap up this world and to bring in the new heavens and the new earth. Until that time, then, there is always going to be a seed time and a harvest. We are always going to have the ability to grow the food that we need to survive. So, in conclusion then, the Christian and the environment. We have a responsibility that we have to take seriously. We have to look after this world that God has given us. We have to nurture it. We have to protect it. But at the same time, we also have these assurances that should protect us from being alarmed by a lot of what we hear. God is in control of this world, and he has promised to sustain this creation for us, even as we take our responsibility to nurture it and to look after it seriously. Well, thank you for joining with me and listening to this short thought on the Christian and the environment.